All the recording you want to do.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow BICSI members. We'd like to extend a very warm welcome to you for our web seminar that we're hosting today, from as far east as New Zealand to as far west as Western Australia. We've got quite a large area that we're communicating to, and we look forward to being able to share some very insightful comments with you moving forward. Just step you through the program. A little bit of housekeeping material that we need to orchestrate for you. First of all, if you have any questions, please direct their questions through the web moderator. That's Sangeeta at the moment from Fluke Networks via the chat box, and then we'll endeavour to address them. If we have the time at the end of the seminar, we'll be able to address them. If we do run out of time though, be assured that we are recording these questions and we'll be able to answer them for you directly post webinar. Just an important aspect for our credential holders in attendance, we are looking at obtaining CECs for this event. So an important aspect is only about an hour, so at best we're looking at one CEC, but still it provides us with a bit of an education and instruction as to the professional development criteria that's important for us. Just give you a quick rundown of our agenda for today. Just a quick introduction from myself. You're probably all sick of hearing me, as I was the host for the previous webinar that we held a couple of weeks ago. Be assured you'll hear less from me in the future ones as we hand over the responsibility to our local coordinators, and they'll take it in turns in terms of delivering this presentation and hosting some of these local speakers. Today, we did have a couple of other speakers. Unfortunately, we had some late withdrawals, so we've rearranged some of the material. This presentation is what I was originally going to present at the Canberra seminar when it was originally going to be a physical seminar. So it was prepared on the return from my visit to the BICSI US Winter Conference, which was quite exciting. So what we're going to be doing is presenting material on that. I spoke briefly with Todd Taylor, the BICSI President, last week about that, and he was endeavouring to join us. So you can see him there as a joint presenter. I don't know if Todd is around at the moment, so hopefully you are, Todd, and you'll be able to join us. So please just jump in whenever it becomes appropriate. And then we'll have a little bit of time for some Q&A at the end of it. And the intent is to try and avoid going for too much longer than about an hour and a half. Okay, just step you through some of our webinar programs. As you can see, this is our fourth one. There's a summary of the topics that we've covered, and there's a preview of some of the topics that we're going to cover moving forward. We're holding them every 2 weeks, Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Australian time, 1 p.m. New Zealand time, and 9 a.m. in WA time. And if you're in South Australia, that would make it 10:30 a.m. Hopefully we're covering off a number of the topics that you're looking at. Essentially, these were presentations that have been earmarked by our coordinators when we were planning original Q1 physical seminars. So thankfully, many of our presenters have kindly agreed to delivering their presentations via webinar. So you'll get to hear their material if you haven't heard them already. Just a note that we are recording these webinars, so you will be able to get access to them. We'll post them on our website. We're just going through the mechanics of that soon. Just work out the simplest way for you to stream them rather than have to download gigantic video files. And importantly, I'd like to express our appreciation to Fluke Networks and R&M for facilitating our South Pacific web seminars. Just a note to those of you, as you've received invitations, both platforms, so Fluke Networks use WebEx, R&M use GoToWebinar. Both platforms have different registration methodologies. So we've arranged for registration to come through the BICSI portal on our website. You'll get the registration, then we'll send you the links for the specific webinar itself. So apologise if you find that a little complicated, but that's the best way we can make it work for the time being. And we are very grateful to Fluke and R&M for giving us access to their service, which is a great advantage for us to be able to deliver these programs. Just wanted to take you through some news items. The nominations for board positions has closed, and there you'll see the nominees. We have 5 nominees: Brad Deuce, Daniel Ellis, Lee Faulkner, Kai Topping, and Marie Vermey. So soon we will post their nominations and their commentary, their vision for BICSI on the website, and you have a chance to select from them who you'd like to represent BICSI moving forward, and their positions will then take effect as of about September, October this year, later this year at our forthcoming conference. Thought I'd also let you know a little bit about the BICSI Global Director position as well. Some of you are aware that we are invited to, as members in the South Pacific, are invited to nominate for this position. The position is currently being filled by Betty Bezos from the Caribbean and Latin America region. But nominations for the position moving forward for the next 2 years are currently open, and we seriously encourage South Pacific members to think about joining. It would be fantastic to have a local representative on that board to be able to speak about not only our issues, but the broader global perspective in terms of the directions that BICSI should be going into. And this essentially gives BICSI South Pacific a seat at the board, the BICSI Global Board. A very important role to have. Clearly, it requires significant vision and understanding of really where the industry should go. So we would encourage people to nominate for that. There you'll see the link. If you want to know more information, feel free to give us a call or send me an email, and I can direct you to that particular space. Training, we did talk about that over the last few webinars. Be aware that we have free and discounted online training courses available till the end of June, so the next couple of months, and that's the URL for BICSI's Learning Academy. We've had a number of BICSI corporate members reach out to me, notifying us that they're also offering online free courses. You'll see there CommScope, Simon, Annixter. These are the companies who have reached out to us. If you are a corporate member and you do have some material that you'd like to share with us, by all means, let me know, and we'd be more than happy to let our members know that we do have free or discounted training programs. You'll see also that AVICSA have notified us they have some free online courses, and there are a number of other organizations, whether it's project management, business, HR, law. Right now, we all need to keep up to date with what's going on. So a lot of organizations are very kindly offering their training free. And it's a great opportunity for us to lift our skill and knowledge in these areas. If you're interested in any particular area, either delivering or finding material, by all means, feel free to get in touch with me, and we're only too happy to direct you to the right location for that information. Just a bit of an update on our conferences. The New Zealand conference, as you know, was actually scheduled to be today. We're supposed to be hosting 400 or 500 people at our New Zealand conference. Courtesy of coronavirus, that's now been deferred. We currently have a 29 September tentative booking, and I've had some recent conversation with the venue. They are expecting announcements from the New Zealand government on the 11th of May, so next week. They do anticipate the relaxing of the lockdowns to the point where they will, they hope, as of May the 11th, they'll be able to have up to 100 people at an event at Ellerslie. And if we see further reduction in the restrictions, there's a good chance we'll be able to hold our conference on the 29th of September. They are keeping us informed as closely as possible so that we can then start the promotion and reactivation of the conference dates and let all of the stakeholders know. Importantly, our exhibitors and sponsors, our delegates, the members across the South Pacific region, and to let all the folk in the industry in New Zealand be aware that the conference is running ahead. But we're not jumping the gun just yet. It hasn't been confirmed just yet, but we still have that booking, and we hope that we'll be able to get that organised as soon as possible. We are including a technology experience zone, which is a more tactile area. We want to be able to demonstrate technology to everyone that comes along, and then talk to the subject matter experts so that organisations can get their network, their IoT, their infrastructure done right. The BICSI Australian conference has been deferred to 2021, and we're currently looking at a couple of venues in Sydney. We'll keep you updated with all of that. And also globally, many BICSI events have been deferred or cancelled, and that includes Europe, Middle East, UK, Singapore, India, Colombia. Just interestingly, and if Todd's on the call, he can just give us a bit of an update. But in recent discussions with BICSI head office, the US Fall Conference, which is scheduled for the end of September and beginning of October, is currently being developed as a hybrid conference, with some presentations potentially being delivered in person, others virtually. They're also exploring software programs that can, if they're forced to go into lockdown, the conference is in Vegas, if they're forced to go into lockdown, they will be able to explore virtual exhibition booths. So a lot of work to be done, and we'll keep you informed as that progresses bit by bit. Okay, last slide in terms of the update. We did mention this in the previous presentation. Apologies if you've heard it before, but we wanted to just reiterate a couple of important things. Communications is vitally important, and there's no doubt, there's no argument that we facilitate an essential service. Without communications, without ICT infrastructure, businesses wouldn't function. People would go crazy with cabin fever because they can't communicate. And of course, that brings on the other two areas of our physical and mental health. By all means, we need to be doing everything possible to contain the spread of coronavirus. Self-isolation is important. Lockdown is important. Observing government regulations is important. We're happy to see that the curve is being flattened in both Australia and New Zealand and other parts of the world. We just need to hunker down and make sure that we do it right. And of course, while we're in that situation, our mental health is important. That's becoming very topical at the moment. So please express your concern for our community and demonstrate ways that you can reach out to family, relatives, workmates, neighbours, local businesses, etc. We are seeing some very good-natured people doing a lot of great things on just stepping out of the norm. You've probably seen it on the news, current affairs programs, etc., of just some stellar people, and we really want to applaud them. And that area of the healthcare workers is the one that comes up most of all. The world has gathered together to applaud what healthcare workers are doing, and it is spectacular. But also, we cannot underscore enough the significance of what we as an industry do, our fellow ICT workers, many of whom are doing some incredible things to ensure that people have communications. We're all trying to keep operating business as usual as much as possible. Communications are vitally important. So by all means, give yourself a pat on the back. Congratulate and applaud your fellow ICT workers, because we're providing this essential service that helps us to get through these crazy times. And of course, it will only enhance the significance of what we offer, because it's all about communication. Todd, not sure if you're online at the moment. I can't see, but if you're online, just let us know if you want to jump in with some comments. No? All right. Well, that means either Todd's online and muted, or he hasn't been able to join us. So let me step you through a global industry update. So I'm going to spend probably about, 45 minutes or so, just giving you a bit of a summary of some of the key points I took out of the BICSI Winter Conference in February. It just seems weird that it was only a couple of months ago, yet it seems like a lifetime ago that we're in an environment with several thousand people at a conference. The aspect of self-isolation didn't even come to people's mind. And yet here we are now, only a couple of months later, and we're all in self-isolation. So what I wanted to do was focus on some of the key learnings from this event and some of the directions that BICSI is moving into, not only in the US, but globally, and some of the areas that we're looking at picking up in the South Pacific. Just thought I'd share with you some of the, I guess, the atmosphere that was around, and I'm talking to yourselves, preaching to the converted, so to speak. Every year, we just see change in ICT infrastructure, simply because we're in the technology field. Life is about technology, and information sharing, information gathering, and communicating is what we do. We facilitate all of that. So the world has an unceasing appetite for more and more data. And as you can see, There is some of the big ticket items for 2020, greater data speeds and cabling categories. These are advancing simply to keep up with the demand, and the projection of demand is still exponential. So what was kilobits per second is now megabits per second, and now moving into gigabits a second, and who knows where we'd go to from there. But we as an industry need to keep ahead of that curve, because we're going to be called upon to facilitate that, whether it's the products, the design, the deployment, the methodologies, the maintenance, the testing, etc. All of those things come to the fore in terms of being able to meet this demand. We're also seeing significant development in optical fiber, again, to meet demands. We're seeing new applications, people digitizing different building services and technologies and applications, so that we're finding more and more people relying on our infrastructure. What is interesting as we talk about this, from our perspective, the platform of Ethernet just seems to be the norm. People are constantly uploading new technologies and going directly to Ethernet or TCP/IP protocols that are universal, which basically means the infrastructure we provide will be able to support, manage and handle technologies and applications that we've never even thought about as yet. So we just need to keep ahead of the curve and be confident that we'll find many applications. We'll constantly be relying on the infrastructure that we have. You probably find yourself being approached by people in different technologies, whether it's the security industry, the AV industry, the building services, the HVAC industry, different industries that will all require digital technologies to support their new applications. And it's the area that we can provide that assistance and service. As a result of these new services being digital, we're seeing the convergence of technologies. I can recall 30 odd years ago when I was first doing design work with structured cabling systems, the opportunity was there to aggregate many building services. There was reluctance to do so at the time. There was a fear of technology not being up to scratch. Well, certainly it's tried and proven now, and convergence is a norm. The ability to put multiple applications on a single platform is very easy. There are high-level management systems and software that can manage all of that. So this is a trend that we're seeing, and it will only continue. So once again, our infrastructure will be relied upon by many services that will all be converged together. We're seeing the expansion into peripheral industries. You're probably having lots of conversations with different areas, public address systems, security people, intercom systems. The list just goes on. And we'll talk a little bit about some of these areas in our presentation this morning. And of course, with that comes new responsibilities and accountabilities. For those of you who were at our conference back in November last year in Melbourne, we tried to address this. We had a number of lawyers speaking about different areas of the law with regard to technology, the Internet of Things, etc. And we did talk about accountabilities. Now, one thing that came out of this picture was that generally the law lags technology. So as technology runs leaps and bounds, we get development, it then gets standardized. Sometimes we have regulations, and then there are disputes, and then the law gets involved. So it's important that we are conscious of what we do. We certainly don't want to be caught out by stepping outside of our comfort zone, perhaps into an area where our accountabilities are being extended. So please be aware of that, and we'll continue to reach out to various legal and commercial entities for guidance in these particular areas. Okay, looking at our conference, what I found was some of the big ticket items that came out of the winter conference in February. PoE lighting. So not specifically PoE. I was quite surprised that lighting was a big ticket item. Of course, coupled with that is remote power delivery, and there are a number of options that are being presented there. So we'll touch on some of that information. Smart buildings was another area that was frequently touched on, smart or intelligent buildings. The next point was, I found fascinating, public policy. This is a term that's now being used as advocacy. Oh, I've just got a message, Todd is online. Todd, welcome along. And feel free to jump in at any time if you wanted to make some comments as we go through it. And then, of course, passive optical networks is another area of technological development, and this was covered up very nicely. I will make the comment, I'll just finish off with at the end of the last slide of the presentation, that just a little bit of a note now. All of the presentations from the BICSI Winter Conference are posted on the BICSI US website, bixi.org. To get access to it, I strongly encourage you to do so because there is a wealth of knowledge. Simply log in with your details, your member login details, then go to the conference archive, and then you'll find the 2020 Winter Conference, and you'll be able to just search through all the material. All the topics are listed there by date and time, and click on them. They're all PDFs, and you can step through them and certainly benefit from the knowledge that's presented there for them. Okay, I'll move into some of the presentations, some of the topics that were there. What I found, I attended the Intelligent Building Committee meeting, and one of the big ticket items was Category 8. So this is for those of you who haven't participated or seen any of the committees and subcommittees that BICSI head office has, the Intelligent Building Committee has about 50 or 60 members, all of whom are subject matter experts, and their knowledge is incredible. I found it fascinating just listening to what they had to say. Many of these individuals are also on different industry standards committees, some on IEEE, some on ISO, some on IET, some on TIA, even some on the Australian New Zealand standards committees. So we do get the benefit of subject matter expert opinion, comment. Did someone want to jump in? No? All right, I'll keep going. Someone wants me to stop, just pop a note up, or Sangeeta, if you needed to jump in with some comments, or Todd, if you want to jump in with some comments, just let me know. So in the meantime, I'll just keep going. Right now, the TIA defined Category 8 components is yet to be resolved as to how to deal with the disparity between that and the ISO channel requirements. What came out of that meeting was that Category 8 components may be used to make up a Class EA channel. So that just this is a very common question that came up. Apparently the committee members have been receiving comments. In fact, when the Intelligent Building Standard went out for public comment, BICSI 007, there were numerous comments, and this was one of the most common of the questions. So as we noted there in that last comment, further work is being carried out by standards committees to give this issue more clarity. So it's identified as an issue. So both ISO and TIA individuals are working on this area. BICSI 007 committee is also addressing it, and they're relying on information from there. So to give you a bit of a snapshot, the Intelligent Building Standard has been released. Oh, sorry, is being released, my apology. It's been finalized. It is expected to be released this year, and it will bring on board the most recent of the documentation that's come through on that. Again, Todd, if you are unmuted and if you want to make some comments, by all means, please jump in. Okay. Okay, optical fiber. Now, there was a very, very informative presentation on optical fiber technology, and participating in the group on this presentation was a representative from the Fiber Optic Technology Consortium, the FOTC, as you can see up there, which is part of TIA. Now, their remit is to advocate vendor-neutral standards to take fiber performance up and beyond 1 petabyte per second data transmission. I've been in this industry for a long, long time, and I could never have fathomed data transmission at that speed. That is an insane amount of data to be transmitting, but this is where we are at the moment. This is part of the exponential growth that we're seeing in technology. So by all means, this is going to become the norm for us moving forward. As you'll see that there are a number of steps being considered by the group, and by the way, BICSI is part of this FOTC group, pardon me. I've got just a summary of some of the steps being explored to increase data capacity on optical fiber. And there you'll see Some of them we know, some of them we don't know. And one of them was reducing the fiber cladding diameter from 250 micron or micrometers to 200 micrometers. That's simply a spatial concentration to ensure that we can put more fiber pathways into a cable. Fairly simple approach. Multi-core fiber. You've probably seen some of the presentations we've had in BICSI South Pacific late last year. In fact, I think we had that at our seminars as well as our conference. Some of the technologies to put multiple multiple fiber pathways down a single core of fiber. We've also had presentations on the technology called few mode fiber, which is fascinating in terms of its ability to enhance the performance of multi-mode fiber. In fact, it's been presented to me a while ago as multi-mode on steroids. So these are some of the physical elements that the committee are looking at, or the consortium are considering. What is fascinating at the moment is even the transmission medium, the transmission method. There's a strong leaning towards 4-pair PAM4 transmission encoding. So PAM4 is a pulse amplitude modulation, basically in 4 quadrants. For those of you who are a fiber specialist listening, you could probably explain all the details to me about that. I'll just read you some notes that I took from the presentation. And again, if you wanted to find more information, by all means, have a look at the presentation on the BICSI website. The panel presenters basically said that with regard to active products, we seem to have come to the end of the road for VEXEL, which is the old vertical cavity surface emitting laser, which was the seriously cheap way of making single mode optical fiber work with lasers. Effectively, it was a laser and a chip. It's been around now for about 20 odd years. That was a go-to technology. We're about the end of the road there with that. So their consortium is exploring different ways to get more bandwidth from single mode fiber. And this is where the PAM4 encoding comes in. I'll just make some other notes. Encoding the transceiver is one option, but since most data centers use MTO fibers, PAM4 isn't good past 40 gig, which I found was interesting. So just using PAM4 on its own wasn't good enough. So now what they're doing is they're looking at potentially a 4-pair PAM4 transmission path. So effectively, that's four pairs at 50 gigabit per second each, and presented on LC duplex connectors. So this is the takeout I've had from this particular presentation. If you are interested in more information on that, would like to explore it, by all means, have a look at that presentation at the BICSI website, or you'll find more information at their website, which is www.tiafotc.org. Apparently there's a number of webinars that are there, and apparently you can get CECs for them too. So that's worth having a look at. I'll just repeat that, www.tiafotc.org. Hopefully you've got that. If you didn't get it, just let me know and I can pass that information on to you. Okay, I wanted to tackle this issue of public policy advocacy. Many of you have heard me for several years saying that BICSI needs to lobby. We need to be in the face of the regulators. We need to be promoting the significance and importance of infrastructure and not let it be just relegated to the nice to have, but not necessary to have. I have to admit my terminology was wrong. It's not lobbying. Lobbying means a completely different thing, but I learned the appropriate term at the BICSI conference of public policy advocacy. This is doing the same thing, but the intent is still the same, but it's not about lobbying government organizations, etc. It's about going to the regulators. It's about going to the authorities to advocate technology solutions. And as that statement, that first slide said, it's the legislators that are important. So in Australia, it's going to typically be the Australian Communications Media Authority, the ACMA, who is the telecommunications regulator, but it goes well beyond that. There's the National Construction Code, so we need to go to the Australian Building Codes Board. We need to talk to different state legislators for electrical services, for security services, for building services, etc. So there's a wide range of areas that we need to be talking to, and it's becoming more and more important as we start seeing power over Ethernet coming into the world. This is the area that the public policy advocacy presentation talked about. You can see what we heard at the BICSI conference was POE lighting is the big topic everyone's on about, but that really falls under the broader umbrella of remote powering. So just you'll note that third bullet point, I found this quite fascinating. The BICSI is looking to take the lead as a subject matter expert in creating position papers on numerous topics. We again, Todd, if you're able to chime in with some comments, you're welcome to do so. But my takeout, oh, Todd.
Yeah, this is if you can hear me. Sorry for coming in late. We had a major thunderstorm roll through here, so we lost power for a little bit.
Oh no. Well, I'm glad you're on board.
And it's still rumbling through, so hopefully I won't drop off. But I do want to thank you guys for letting me join you on the call. And for this topic about the advocacy in particular, we feel feeling strongly enough about it that it's actually one of our strategic points for our strategic plan for the next year or two. So I know we're looking at starting a new committee if we can, probably the beginning of next year. But we have active folks now that a lot of our region directors actually get involved in this process as well. We just had one in our Northeast region that went to go see the legislatures to kind of battle for our side. You're right, the POE lighting is not necessarily the exact topic. It's the increased power over the cable. That's really what's driving a lot of things, and they're trying to push more of that towards the electrical side of the house versus the telecom side. So we've got a lot of folks that some associations that we're partnering with that help us as a watchdog across the U.S. at least, and we'll probably look at how we can expand that. As part of my speech on the winter conference was part of the becoming the one BICSI. It's not that's an issue everywhere, not just in the U.S. but in all regions of the world. So. I'm glad to see you talking about that as a slide here. It's an important topic, that's for sure. Definitely has an impact on our members.
Thanks for that, Todd. Yes, I must admit I was very encouraged by listening to that presentation. I know Pat McMurray, one of our region directors, one of our board members, is a strong advocate. He was one of the presenters on this panel discussion. And interesting, you'll see that last point there of the NSCA, which stands for the National Systems Contractors Association, not the other NSCA. This is a group of organizations, typically integrators, and they also have people like Cisco, Belden involved with it. And it's approaching the legislators, the authorities, the AHJs, as you call it in the US, to understand the significance of infrastructure. I know in Australia, we had the recent situation, or about a year and a half ago, where our regulator, the ACMA, raised the question, should we deregulate cabling? For those of you who aren't aware, BICSI and BRCA put in submissions in response to this consultation paper, as did 30 other industry groups and individuals. So they had 32 responses. And the comment back from the ACMA was, normally they get 3 or 4 responses from industry. They were astounded by the overwhelming response from industry. And this was not just our industry, it was the carriers that communicated, it was some of the healthcare groups that responded, the other industry associations like electrical, security, life safety, all responded. And the significant issue that came out of that was there was an overwhelming response saying, don't reduce or remove legislation, increase it. And the key areas that came around was IoT. So not only putting power over Ethernet over these telecommunications lines, but the greater reliance on ICT infrastructure by life safety, medical, security situations or systems, that they need to have the confidence that the infrastructure will be supporting the applications. So, and the ACMA has yet to make a decision, announce a decision on that. We're still waiting to hear, but be assured that the industry is overwhelmingly saying we need tighter regulations, not looser. And that message, I think we can take globally. We can take that to all different areas. We have shared information from the ACMA with various BICSI entities outside of Australia. So BICSI New Zealand has presented this information to Standards New Zealand and Ministry of Business, Industry and Employment, I think MBIE. We've also sent information to the Middle East, sent information to the US, and shared this information about the importance of regulation and how it's dealt with. And I think it's important that BICSI takes a leading position in that space, be it by writing position papers, as we've noted there, by approaching legislators, by creating subcommittees, etc. And I, for one, personally, strongly support that desire to advocate, and I will call upon BICSI South Pacific members to join us in this particular space. So if you have vision, ideas and thoughts on that, by all means, contact myself, and then we can work with Todd and the BICSI Global Board, and we can start looking at areas where we can get a more homogeneous approach to advocate for the importance of ICT infrastructure. Okay, PoE lighting, a little bit of a segue now into this area. This was a fascinating presentation. It was entitled Design Considerations for PoE Lighting. It was presented by an engineer who worked for one of the manufacturers but had extensive experience in lighting. And you'll note I've lifted some of the comments that he made in his presentation into the PowerPoint slide here. I found this was fascinating, that PoE lighting is disruptive to architects and lighting designers because it's not conventional. And so that's issue number one. So their use of lighting has been a conventional approach for decades. You have regulations about lighting illumination intensity. You've got applications for what people are done for. You've got electrical requirements, and it's just done. It's pretty straightforward. The minute we introduce an alternative to this by going to PoE, then it's considered unconventional, and then we have the problem of few people understanding. So the comment was made at this presentation that there was a resistance to PoE lighting from the lighting and construction industry at first. But now, because there's a greater understanding of it, the benefits are perceived by many people. We're starting to see an uptake of the technology, and several manufacturers are now exploring this area. Lots of engineers, both lighting and ICT engineers, are working together to ensure that it works well and is delivered as expected. So you'll see there that second bullet point was a lift from one of his comments. So designing successful PoE lighting system requires collaboration between the RCDD, that's the cabling, the ICT infrastructure expert, the lighting engineer, the architect, the electrician, and the network engineer, because it's an aggregation of multiple technologies. So I've listed there 4 key points that I took out from there, and I'll refer to my notes as I convey them to you. But by all means, have a look at this presentation on the BICSI website. It's well worth a look at to just get some insight into that space. So first of all, power losses are to be considered from the sending of device, say your switch, to the power device, the lighting troffer. I'll just make a note. This is the note I took from Carl's presentation. He said, remember, there are losses from the power sending equipment to the power device. So 60 watts output from the PSE is about 51 watts delivered. 90 watts output is about 71 watts delivered. And then he said, read the switch specifications. So that's your PoE switch. For example, if it says it has 820 watts available on a 24 port switch, that means 13 ports at 60 watts or 9 ports at 90 watts, which basically means that some ports won't be able to deliver power over Ethernet. So bear in mind that it's the accumulation or the aggregation of all the ports using PoE. It's a shared resource. So if you're powering, trying to send 90 watts and your switch only has 820 watts available, only 9 ports are going to be able to deliver power. So you might find it'll be a bit of disappointment when the lighting just simply won't work. So bear that in mind. Just continuing on that comment, so the switch must be rated to have more power than the total potential requirement. For example, a 24 port PoE switch at 60 watts output means you need to have a minimum of 1440 watts rated output on that switch. Found that fascinating because I just assumed that everything was configured. You might, in your own experiences, might know a bit more about it. You probably do, but bear in mind this is a very important reminder that we need to check the specifications on the switch. It's not just about the cabling and the troffer or the LED light, etc. Most important. Okay, the next one, the location of the node. Is it in line or within the lighting fixture? So you require some intelligence in the node on the device. And that raises the question about, and that's where we start talking about the lighting suppliers. We need to have a conversation with them to ensure that everyone's talking the same language. So I'll just make a note, again, I'll read some of the notes I took. Lighting manufacturers ship fixtures with preset illumination, which is typically low, medium, and high illumination. Now, this comes out of the US, which is based on UL configurations, but bear in mind that both in Australia and New Zealand, we do have some strict building code regulations about lighting intensity and the illumination levels, depending on where it is, whether it's an office environment or a hospital or a home or whatever the case is. There are specific illumination requirements, and therefore manufacturers will have to meet that. So I'll just repeat that. So manufacturers will ship preset illumination. So they're reluctant to sell fixtures without drivers because they don't trust the IT guys to set the lighting levels to code. Fair comment? I would say if you've had this experience, you probably understand exactly what I'm talking about. Do the lighting guys hand over the responsibility to the IT guys, the network guys, to then deploy it, and only to find that the lighting levels aren't right? Both disciplines are a science and require input, and that goes back to the original comment that we need a collaboration between all of the responsible parties. So essentially, the comment was made, you need to have a lighting guy on your PoE lighting team to make sure that the system is functional and compliant to code. An important consideration to take on this, because we don't want to be the people who cause a building not to be issued its certificate of occupancy simply because we got the lighting wrong. What is our responsibility? What is our accountability? The minute we take on board lighting issues, then we have that accountability. So working with subject matter experts in that space means that we can get the job done properly. Another comment there was series versus parallel connection. This has a lot to do with the power consumption. Once again, it relates back to the power capability of our switch. And then, so I think I've already covered that last bullet point with that, what I just read out. Assigning power levels in the field requires re-engineering of lighting levels to ensure compliance to local building codes. As I said, this was an eye-opener to me to understand the complexity of lighting. And if we are going to take that on board as a provider, integrated designer, whatever, configurer of PoE lighting, we need to be aware of the responsibility and accountability we have to delivering lighting levels. Again, more information on that, very good presentation, so I encourage you to have a look at that. Okay, remote power delivery. I'll go over to my next set of notes. Couple of presentations in this space. Some of the emerging applications were driving the demand for remote power delivery. In fact, I questioned a lot of suppliers and other folk when I was at the conference. Everyone says that you can't buy a switch, an Ethernet switch without PoE. That has become the norm. Sorry, you can buy them, but you have to pay more to take that service away. So be aware that this is going to be the norm. PoE switches are the norm now, and therefore our clients or yourselves as end users will start to demand the deployment of PoE services such as wireless access point, 5G technology, CCTV surveillance, IoT, PoE lighting, etc., etc. That is going to become the norm, and the demand will be there for it. So we need to be aware of not only the technologies to facilitate that, but the capabilities, the limitations, and the nuances about ICT infrastructure for that particular space. And there were a couple of very good presentations. One was power over Ethernet, another was powered optical fiber. So I'll just quickly step through a couple of those. Some good points I gleaned. We know a lot of this anyway because we've had a lot of this information presented to us, and you would do it in your own research as well. Power over Ethernet is defined by IEEE 802.3bt. That's the current standard that rates it to 100 watts or 90 watts effectively. And then you've got different classes A through D, depending on both the deployment method, whether it's one pair or all 4 pairs we're delivering it, or what dimension of cable, what cross-sectional area of cable it will be able to handle it. Importantly, the TIA has a Technical Services Bulletin 184-A. This is what was presented, provides guidelines for power delivery levels over specific cable diameters in different categories and installation methodologies. If you get a chance to have a look at that, by all means do so. But you'll also find that there's been a lot of information presented. In fact, I think Murray Teal in his BICSI webinar presentation a couple of weeks ago put up a table that had specific cable diameters or gauges and its power capability that ISO and ASNZS are looking at. So once again, there's some guidelines there for you. By all means, look at these because we're going to be held accountable for the performance of PoE devices and different services. The next area is a very tricky one. I've heard conversations with people about it in the past, but nobody came up with anything concrete about this information. So it was a fascinating presentation to listen to. I've gleaned a few comments there, and I will pass on this information. Once again, I'll encourage you, have a look at the website and download this presentation. So just to step you through it, TIA 568-2 and the TSB 184-A stated that less than 25 ohm DC loop resistance and less than a 200 milliohm DC resistance unbalanced is required to successfully deliver PoE. Now, we've had a number of presentations. I think Wayne from Fluke has spoken about this at length, as has Mark, I believe, Mark Connell, Wayne Allen, about the need for DC resistance unbalance to be monitored on your cabling plant to ensure that it can manage PoE properly. Because if we have the resistance unbalance or excessive resistance, things go wrong. Now, this focus has been particularly on the link from the outlet to outlet, but we've sort of, I don't know whether it's been in the too hard basket or we've sort of gotten around to it, or it's an unmanageable environment, the fly leads and the patch leads. This presentation specifically looked at it. Very important document to note. Now, this gentleman who did this presentation said that laboratory tests show that, I'll read it straight off the slide there, field terminated or crimped patch leads have greater DC resistance and resistance unbalance than factory terminated patch cords. So they should not be used for PoE applications. Now, those of you in Australia know that field terminated patch cords have been outlawed for decades. Even in my manufacturing years, it was always known. And the simple fact is, out of a factory, it's a tested and a controlled environment. And that was just simply for the reliability of the transmission medium. It's now coming to a different issue now with power over Ethernet. And in fact, the gentleman with this presentation mentioned that there were numerous examples in the test results of poorly field terminated patch cords that simply did not work. The PoE service did not work. And he gave us some statistics. He said a 1 ohm resistance in a patch lead introduces major power loss. Now, who would have thought 1 ohm? Big deal, that's small. But the results that they had showed it had a significant loss in power. So you might go from the situation of trying to deliver 50 watts to a CCTV camera. You might only get 42 watts of power. If that receiving device can't produce or can't receive enough power, it will shut down. And you will have inadvertently caused a failure because the fly lead going from the switch to the patch panel was poorly done. And then the other area, which I found was fascinating, if you have more than 200 milliohms of DC resistance unbalance, it will severely impact data throughput. So I'll just note that this is about data throughput, not power, but your actual data transmission. And to quote him, he said, it would cause DC current to saturate the transformer and dropping throughput by as much as 50%. That's a big number. So if you've got a dodgy patch lead, you could inadvertently reduce the data throughput from, say, I don't know, 40 megabits a second to 20 megabits a second. It could mean the difference between catching a crime on a CCTV camera or missing a crime on a CCTV camera, or failure complete. It is important, and I thought it was most important that this information get conveyed to our South Pacific members, because we often will tell our clients and provide our clients with a reliable infrastructure. It'll support PoE, it's been tested, it's been certified, et cetera, and then a year down the track, the client wants a new patch lead, a different color, whatever, and they just go off to the local, I don't know, retail store, buy a Cat5 patch cord, plug it in, and it doesn't work. Or they get the, I don't know, the local technician or maintenance guy, he gets a bit of Cat6 cable, goes down to the local shop and buys some crimp-on plugs, clicks them on, puts them on, assuming he's done the job properly. The danger is if when it's out of our hands, when it's handed over to the end user, they can make a mozza of their infrastructure. So by all means, the message is communicate to your clients or to your employer the importance of properly rated PoE patch cords. I'll stress that again. Make sure that whatever patch cords are deployed to start with are PoE rated, and that the client, the end user, understands that they should only ever replace the patch cords with PoE rated patch cords. So that was, I found, one of the highlights for me at that conference. There was another presentation on powered fiber, which I found was fascinating. Look, you and I have probably heard the term for some time. We think, wait a minute, how do you put power down fiber? Well, it's not. You can't put power down a non-conductive device, not that I know of anyway. So the presentation basically said that powered fiber is actually a hybrid fiber copper cable, like HFC is in some degree. What you'd end up with is the advantages of longer distances and higher speeds, because the optical fiber will drive longer distances. It'll provide higher speeds, far better than, say, a Cat6, Cat6A cable, copper cable, but the power is delivered by the copper conductors. So as I said there, that second bullet point, the key advantage is longer, the distance is longer than 100 meters, especially when using larger conductors like 22 gauge or even 12 gauge power conductors. The speaker noted it's particularly applicable in passive optical LAN environments to remotely power ONTs. So it's a classic case of horses for courses. The ability to power devices remotely on a full fiber network is quite possible. Most manufacturers provide powered fiber or hybrid fiber copper cabling. So it's a technology that is, it's an optional technology that's there. It can be deployed to great advantage in these situations. So the message is simply be aware that it exists and have it as part of your suite of solutions that you can provide or utilize in your network. Okay, power considerations. I had a conversation with an interesting gentleman. His name was Randy Ivans. I've met him before. He works for UL. He's their expert on cabling. UL exhibited at the BICSI conference. They also had a couple of speakers at the conference as well. Had a long conversation. I've used Randy in the past for information on HD-based T, POH, power over HD-based T in that particular area, and power over Ethernet PoE environments. He did mention to me that the technology of DC power reticulation, we're probably familiar with some of the digital electricity, digital power systems that we've seen. The term is now emerging as packet energy transfer. And Randy mentioned to me that he knows of 4 companies that currently provide this service, and there are more exploring and looking into developing it. So there is a high likelihood of this technology becoming more mainstream. So that is literally delivering power over communications cabling. Now in Australia, New Zealand, the issue of ES1, ES2, ES3, energy source 1, 2, 3, different ratings. This has now become the norm. It's been introduced by ISO several years ago. We've adopted an NZS standards, and the S009 and S008 regulatory requirements that will be published, we hope, this year, are also factoring in ES1, ES2, ES3. This is a good example of these technologies, these applications. So bear that in mind as you start exploring different options, or whether manufacturers are presenting material to you, products to use. Look into it, and as a reference point, ask the question, is this an ES1, ES2, or ES3 circuit? I cannot stress that to you enough. We need to make sure, because of the accountability and the responsibility we have. Bear in mind that ES3 is a very unique environment. ISO has it completely unlimited current and voltage deployment over a telecommunications circuit. So it brings on board lots and lots of concerns. So bear that in mind. So when you met with people wanting to do digital power or digital electricity, it's under the umbrella of packet energy transfer. Do your research, ask your questions, and make sure that it is compliant to ES1, ES2, or ES3. There'll be more and more information coming out this year, and we'll endeavour to try and get this information out to BICSI members down the track. This comes to my last slide, and just before midday, Melbourne time. So just wanted to again reiterate the importance of going to the BICSI website, bicsi.org. You'll need to log in because it's member access only. And there's the URL for that. Pretty easy to find. Just put in a search for the BICSI archives, BICSI events archives. You'll find not only the 2020 Winter Conference, but several other conferences in the past. You'll be able to download any and all of the presentations. They're all in PDF. There's no audio recording, I understand, but the slides will give you all the details. Very important. And by all means, you'll also find the usually the email address of the presenter, and they would be more than likely to have an inquiry from yourself on that for you to reach out to them. And I've just listed some of the topics from this year's conference. Data center infrastructure, passive optical LANs, digital AV, AV over IP, data transmission at 40 gig and beyond, fiber in IoT, testing for, my apologies for I just spotted a spelling mistake, testing for compliance and performance, wireless LANs, and it just keeps going on and on and on. There's a lot of good, in fact, great presentations there. Todd, did you want to say any other comments, make any other statements? I know you joined us a little bit late, but anything you wanted to add?
Well, not seeing the beginning of the presentation, I apologize for that. The one thing that I would add is I definitely appreciate, I see we have quite a few attendees. I appreciate the participation and definitely the invite from Paul and his group to be a part of this. And I see, I think Betty Bezos is on as well, who is the new, who's serving as the Global Region Director this year. Rick was promoted up to Secretary for the year as Carol took over the PE slot. So we've had a few changes on the board level, and definitely some changes coming up for BICSI as well. So a lot of the stuff that you're seeing presented here, or we've talked about, kind of are starting to play into that one BICSI momentum that I'm trying to build. So I'm wanting to create we've been saying that we're global. What I'm trying to create is an association, or help create an association that actually is. Yes. So I have to pardon the extra noise that may happen. The storm is still rolling outside, so one of our dogs is kind of skittish, so he wanted to come into the room with me. So I apologize if he barks ahead of time. But anyway, so what we're looking for is we're going to make some changes. We'll look for more global participation. Definitely, I know that Paul and Trevor, I'll have to say they did a really good job of going around and hitting all the committee meetings. Every time we popped in, they were there. So they definitely got their steps in. They put their work in at the conference. I can definitely vouch for them for that. And we're looking at increasing that participation in those committees. So we definitely will be looking for the help in those and bringing the subject matter experts in. So don't be shy coming into those. We're looking at more online events. I don't know if you touched on that or not, Paul, but given the the pandemic that we're all looking at, and webinars like these. We're looking at putting more of those on, and even the fall conference this year, we're looking at providing, if it's possible, an in-person, but also an online version of that as well. So it might, provide you an opportunity to actually see some of the log in, see some of these presentations we have coming up. So, but just stay tuned. We have a lot of work going on over the summer. We're really taking a deep dive look into, I mentioned that we were going to do that, take a good deep look into BICSI and its committee structure and all those things. And that's what we're in the middle of doing now. So I'll come out probably in the middle of July. I'll come out with I think a presentation we're looking at putting together to kind of give the membership an update on what's going on and the path we're taking going forward. So again, I just want to thank you for inviting me to your webinar. I hope to participate and more coming down the road, and hopefully there won't be a storm, so I can come in on I can come in on time next time. So
many thanks for that, Todd. Yeah, talk about bad timing with having a thunderstorm come through. But no, great. Certainly appreciate your involvement, and also thank you for staying through to the end. I know it's quite late at night over there for you, so do appreciate your input. And yes, I thank you for mentioning the fall conference. It could be a great opportunity for, if it's some of it or all of it is going to be hosted virtually, could be a great opportunity for us in the South Pacific to get access to some of the superb presentations. I know I've certainly benefited from listening to the presentations that were made at the conference, and of course the networking opportunity. But as an education forum, it certainly is delivering. And having experienced it, yeah, it takes us to another level of skill and knowledge. So I can wholeheartedly encourage our members to try and get onto the virtual conference if that happens in September, which would be well worth doing. So, okay, I'll just close, just a little bit of a notice. The next presentation, we have organized a presentation on 5G for our next presentation on Tuesday, the 19th of May. I was trying to figure out what the date was, and it'll be at the same time. Eric Lalaurie is a Wi-Fi or a wireless expert. He's spoken at BICSI conferences and seminars before. Eric's from WSP. He's a subject matter expert on pretty much RF technologies. So we look forward to hearing his presentation on that. We'll put the invitation out to all to attend that. And just as another point of question, if you have topics you'd like to hear about, by all means, let us know. Or if you'd like to present yourself, if you're a subject matter expert in various fields, by all means, let us know and we'll try and schedule you in. We are running them every 2 weeks. We've got the program booked out until the end of June, end of next month, but we're still, I don't know, waiting to see what happens with government requirements, self-isolation, when we can go back to running our seminars again in physical environment. But we certainly would welcome input from yourselves for presentation, either suggested topics or yourself as a presenter going into July frame. So with that, I'll close the meeting and thank you for your attendance. I haven't seen questions. I suspect it might be my screen. I might be in an awkward situation. Sangeeta, do you have any questions that have come through? No, okay, I can't hear anything. Look, if there are questions and you have sent them, Sangeeta has been recording the questions. She'll forward them on to myself and we'll be able to, and then to Todd, and we'll be able to address them and share them with everybody.
Paul, it's Wayne. There's no questions there at the moment.
Okay, all right, good. Thanks very much for letting us know. And thank you to Fluke for facilitating our webinar today on their WebEx platform. And thank you all for attending. We hope it's been informative. Thanks very much.
thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.